Welcome back. So in the last instalment you saw me start to dismantle the car, removing windows, wheel arches, trim and starting that dreaded prep for paint. I popped out that dint and replaced that leaking front shock absorber. So this week we continue where we left off. For the sill cover, undo these screws along the bottom, and if they don't round off or seize and have to be drilled out, then you're a lucky man. You know, there are so many screws and nuts on these cars. If you remove them, they'd probably be responsible for a quarter of the car's weight. Oof. Off with the wing mirror so I can deal with this. Just look at this. Why design the wiring so short? Now, I know what you're all going to be shouting at the screen. Don't cut the wire on the mirror, undo it from the inside. But with the electrics on these cars being renowned for unreliability, it's bound to have to come off again in the not too distant future. So I'm doing it my way for future ease. Here I'm covering the bullet ends so that when the battery is reconnected, these don't short out. You can see here the line where the previous painters painted up to the trim rather than removing it. This painstaking, tedious chore is one of the most thankless jobs you can do on any car. Tricky and time consuming, it's nevertheless necessary to get the best possible results before putting the car into paint. And it's also an indication why a paint job can be so expensive, as when complete, it all has to go back on again. And then when I've ground all the junk off, I lightly feather it in with the DEROS. You know, if it wasn't for this damage here, I'd be half tempted to carefully lift this trim and repair and paint in situ. This alloy trim is not only tricky to remove without damaging, it's also a pig to refit. So I've purchased a complete new piece. You know, I've had a lot of messages saying, just paint the whole car, just be done with it. But if you were to remove and had to replace all this alloy trim, you'd be into at least a few £1,000s, probably more than the value of an average S4. So this is something one has to give serious consideration to. And seeing as my car from the bonnet to the boot has good clean paint, I'm just going for correction down both sides. So now you know why. Now just come and take a look at this. As you know, this wing's aluminium and it's got a really bad split in it at the bottom there. Now I could botch it up and put a bit of fiberglass or put a bit of filler in and try and smooth it out and paint it, but I think the proper way of doing the job, you see it's split right the way up here, I'd have to get it from the back and the front, is to just TIG weld it. Now I don't own a TIG welder, but I think it's about time I purchase one because the amount of restorations I'm doing, it kind of makes sense rather than borrowing one, you know. Obviously the bumper's plastic, but as I say, the wing's aluminium and it's got to be done properly. So there was only one place for me. R-Tech Welders is a long-established family-run company down in Tewkesbury. Known for their quality range of welders and plasma cutters, strong values run through the core of this family-run business, priding themselves on quality, reliability and outstanding customer service. R-Tech is currently the fastest growing brand in the industry. Today they've kindly invited me down to help meet my requirements, give me a full demonstration, and along with their vast expertise, show me why it should be a first port of call for anybody hoping to venture into and purchase a new machine. And after signing a disclaimer, I meet up with Joe.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Joe.
All right, Joe, I'm Gary.
Nice
Lovely
to meet you.
So, how long has this been going?
It's 3 generations now. I can't remember exactly the years, but it was grandfather originally.
Wow.
Current managing director is my uncle Rob.
You've got some fantastic equipment here.
Yeah,
I was just saying before as well, I think it's amazing that firms like this have survived COVID, because a lot of firms went under, didn't they?
COVID was actually a very interesting one for us. So we did astronomical figures in COVID. People that have got classic cars, projects that were sat waiting for
all the
when
whole
they'll have the
mechanics,
time and money. So we had a massive influx of people just completely setting up their home workshops.
So it had the opposite effect?
Yeah, it was the busiest time we've ever had, effectively.
Yeah. Tell you what, this is a lovely machine. Is this the one you recommend for me?
Yes, so I really like the digital machines. So this is the 170 amp, so it's the smallest one we do. Quite handy because it runs off a 13 amp plug, suits a lot of people.
And what about all the controls and that? I mean, for the normal home mechanic, are they self-explanatory? Are they pretty simple? Or,
yeah, so
I mean, it looks pretty complicated to me.
We do have the AC Easy setup and DC Easy setup. So these are effectively pre-formatted. So we've put in sort of a baseline for your standard parameters, and then you can just adjust the amperage as to what thickness you're going to be welding.
Yeah, I think it's probably about a millimetre.
About a millimetre. So you're probably, on aluminium, it's about 40 to 45 amps per mil roughly.
Yeah.
But with the AC and the DC Easy setup, you effectively eliminate a lot of the controls that you wouldn't know without TIG welding for a start.
Yeah.
You've got 9 programs in here.
Yeah.
Which are all preset by us.
So setting 1 is the thinnest, I take it?
1, 2, 3 will be alley, so it'll be thinnest alley, thicker alley, thick alley, and then when you go to stainless, it then drops down again.
When I'm welding, Joe, I might not weld for another 6 or 7 months sometimes, you know, depending on what project I'm doing. And it's almost like you're starting all over again. But it's amazing how quickly you pick it up again, you know.
It is. I would say it's like riding a bike.
Now, Joe, I must ask you, I'm quite up on safety. Both my parents died of asbestos-related disease, mesothelioma. So it's always kind of up my awareness on that kind of thing.
Definitely.
And I wondered, mask-wise, what do you recommend or what do you use? Because a friend of mine, his brother's a barrister, and recently he was saying there's been a huge influx of cases of cancer of the kidney. And the thing they all had in common was they either work in a garage or the welders. So it's a little bit worrying, really.
Health and safety, I think it was about 2, maybe 3 years ago, had a deeper look into the welding fumes and that side of things. And if you were to work as a full-time welder now, you are required to have an air-fed mask.
Yeah.
It's a lot to do with what you clean the materials with as well. So I've worked with a lot of mechanics who have cleaned the material up before they use it with brake cleaner. It stays in the material to a certain extent, and then when you weld with it afterwards, the fumes from that are really toxic.
Well, that's what makes mustard gas great for the lungs.
Using acetone, for instance, nail varnish remover, it evaporates off, causes no problems with the weld, and also is much better for you than brake cleaner is.
For years, people have not been wearing masks, and it's only now they're seeing the consequences of that.
Yeah.
Your nostrils, your lungs, your ears, your eyes, it's all really important, isn't it, to wear the right gear?
So you might notice, like you say, it's in your nose, but like you say, it's in your lungs as well, and you're not necessarily aware of that.
I noticed you've got a nice big extractor fan there as well. Is that an extractor fan?
So that's an extraction filtration system. So it's got charcoal filters in it.
Yeah.
A bit like the cooker hood.
Yeah.
Same principle. It's slightly more effective than that, but it'll just recirculate the air in here, but eliminate all the harmful fumes.
Should we get to it then?
Yeah. You have got the air-fed system that goes on the rear. Effectively, this is what seals to your face. Flip-up option. So you can effectively still wear it whilst you're grinding, doing other things in the workshop, just to protect yourself.
And then knock it down when you weld
Knock it down when you want to weld. It's got the 4 sensors on here. As soon as it senses that an arc is struck, it darkens automatically. And then you've got the main filter unit that goes with it. Draws the air through here, cleans it all out, delivers it to the back of the mask, which then flows from the top to the bottom.
Wow, that's sexy, that, isn't it? Spaceman. So when I'm all suited and booted, Joe gives me a demonstration.
You need it to sort of become liquid before you start adding anything to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody got their mask down? Yep. Doesn't do anything for a minute, and then we get a nice liquid ball and just move along. It's just rhythm effectively. Just stab, move a little bit, stab, move a little bit. So it's important to keep the torch where it is once you've finished, because the post-flow gas is still running. So if you'd like to sit down, we'll get yourselves comfortable and we'll go from there. Yeah, it's getting a bit far away again.
Oof, shocker. But then with a little bit more practice.
Yeah, there we go. You see what I mean? It just tightens it all up.
Oh, that's a lot better.
That was absolutely perfect, just it was a bit too close to the edge.
Yeah. Practice makes perfect, then.
Exactly that.
So what about if you want to weld 2 pieces together?
No difference at all, really. The hard thing to do when you're welding 2 bits together is actually keeping the arc in the middle. So the hard thing about joining 2 bits is just keeping the torch angle so you've got in 50% power on both sides.
So it's better just to go straight across rather than stitching it?
So there's lots of different ways of doing it. As I said at the start with TIG welding, everybody does it differently. So we can teach you the idea of welding it, and then the rest of it is just seat time.
Yeah. So now I'm off to have a little chat with the managing director, Joe's uncle Rob, to talk about MIG welders. Rob, I know you've got some fabulous pieces of equipment here, but for the normal home mechanic, that's, you know, it's not too fancy. Which is your best seller? This one?
This one, yeah. This is our MIG 180. Our best seller. We've sold over 14,000 of these, and they produce very clean welds, low splatter, and are easy to set up.
Yeah, that's the main thing, isn't it? That's what people want, something that's easy to set up. You know, me and Don were talking about this before. I'll weld something and I'm, you know, pretty decent at it, and then 6 months later it's like starting all over again. You pick it up pretty quickly, but you don't want something that's too complicated, or something that you know, a lot of people leave it on the same setting, but it doesn't quite work if the different thickness metals as well. So,
you know, we do have a guide on this as well, so it tells you where to set the knobs for your individual thicknesses. So on this you can turn it right down, the voltage right down low, the wire feed right down low, and I can weld about 25-30 amps. Yeah. And some can do low on that with 0.6 wire.
So the thinner steel.
So for the thinner steel, so you can actually weld with a consistent weld bead. Yeah. Whereas on the older machines you have to like do a few spots and stop because it's going to blow a hole. With this technology you can literally get it down so low, you can just start the weld to a consistent bead, not blowing holes in it. So for car bodywork, etc., and especially for the beginner, absolutely brilliant. So the gas in the back there, your on-off switch and your cooling fan. A metal wire feed assembly, your rear wire goes on there, feeds through here. Foot pedals, most TIG welders should use one, and especially in aluminium. Some people use them and do special things like pulsing with the pedal, etc.
I think that's why I was getting a bad weld before, you know.
Because you didn't have the pedal on. What, Joe did you with the service and didn't
I was
put a pedal on
looking for
there?
the pedal, I couldn't find it,
right.
yeah.
I need my sewing machine.
Part of the battle as well, Rob, if you've got equipment that's too big and your garage is pretty full and you're tripping over things, that's nice and compact, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. You know, it is our most compact. You know, we do a 250 amp, and then 300 amp, 400 amp versions, but they get bigger and bigger and bigger. But then you're more into the more industrial. But we got machines at Rolls-Royce, Land Rover, they all use that. You know, Robot Wars, the company programs like that, they've all used our machines.
You also do machine that does TIG and MIG. Now,
Yeah.
what do you think of the pros and cons? Do you think it's better to have a 2-in-1 or to have them separate? Dom, you think it's separate's the best, don't you?
Separate for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a bit mixed on it. Obviously, if you've got certain guys who are, maybe they're running from a van, so you've got limited space. I mean, they may have a workshop and actually just need to go out and be a service engineer on site or something like that. Yeah. They need to tackle as many processes as they can with one box. Well, a multi-process machine can be really useful for them, absolutely. Whatever metal's in front of them, they need to do a join on, they'll be able to tackle it. Within the workshop environment, in your home environment or something like that, I think if you can get to the point of having a separate machine that's dedicated for that process, then you'll end up with a better result. So it's a bit horses for courses. And there are certain things that most of the multi-process machines don't actually achieve. TIG welding aluminium, for most of them, isn't something that takes place. They don't have that process built in. It's mainly on the DC side, so it tackles stainless and it tackles the mild steel and some more exotic stuff, but you won't touch the aluminium unless you MIG weld it. So it's a mixed bag.
TIG though, isn't it? It's a very specific thing. There's not many cars, for instance, that are aluminium. You know, you get, you know, it's like the Porsche I'm doing, the wings, the bonnet, the doors are. But there's not many cars that are like that. Most cars are just steel.
Most inquiries are from the Land Rover boys.
What about galvanised steel? You've got to take the service off, haven't you?
Yeah, there's a number of issues around that, all of which are around health and safety, of course. So for sure, get rid of the galv if you can by grinding it away. Anything you do needs to be looked at in terms of making sure you're protecting your lungs as well. So having access to an air-fed mask like we supply. But the issues and concerns around any kind of welding now are far more in the market. The information's out there. HSE are hotter on producing that information for people. So it's there for everyone to read. You know, they should then take whatever precautions they feel are appropriate.
And just to let you know, guys, these are going to be at the NEC for 3 days. So get down there. They'll have the stall. They'll have all the equipment. They're going to be demonstrating. So get down there and see the boys. The beers are on you. Brilliant.
Brilliant, lovely.
So it's back to the garage and back to the grind.